chapter 12 of Wonders of Spiritual Unfoldment. John, it's a big chapter, homesickness. And you are now back in England, and you feel, as you write, ever more a victim to depression. And then you go on about additional information. I thought maybe this is something that you might want to read on page 103.
This was now getting on for 4 years since I left my farm. I've been wandering around in my late 40s, early 50s, without work. In fact, I describe it homeless, jobless, loveless, and alone, more or less living in a motor caravan. And I'd had the best part of a year in Africa, in the deserts of Africa, which had stretched me enormously. I fell in love with the deserts in Africa, the Kalahari and Namibian deserts. And I was fairly confidently equating this great expansion of soul, expansion of heart that I'd encountered in a woman into the infinite expansion. I wasn't yet confident enough to call it spirit, but it was certainly, I found it in the desert, and from time to time I found it in meditation, this just infinite expansion into what's beyond description. So here I am, I found myself back in England, quite unable to fit in, and desperate to find something to do. I was young, so I was still young enough, I was active, I had a certain amount of experience how to utilize it. So I wrote what I was told to do, to write a CV, I suppose you know what that means. It means an account of my life. And where they put on the form additional information, I wrote this. There is no category on earth where I feel I belong. No form that can hold me. Therefore, I seek expression for my freedom. Because I feel this freedom, I can help others to freedom. I'm a free spirit, bound only to love. I live only to love. I will do anything for love. Grant me a channel for my love, and I will give my all. And then I added the comment, not surprisingly, no one offered me a job. I did send this around to quite a number of possible employers, but no one came forward. Well, like most men, I'd spent much of my life looking for or hoping to find a woman with whom I could share this infinite love that I felt flooding through me. And here I wrote, one of the most common mistakes in life is to equate love with women, because not that hope ever left me. Even now, there's always a hope, but it was already expanding into the infinite expanse. And then what happened? So I sort of washed around in this neither one place or another for a while. And then I was introduced to a young teacher, a young man teacher, American, who'd come to England, was holding meetings in England. And I looked into his eyes and I saw the same thing that I'd seen in this woman 4 years earlier, the infinite expansion, infinite love, same thing. And so that was it, no question. I followed him to America, San Francisco, actually, where he was holding court in a sort of new age community of rather new age young people, in which I was completely sort of out of place. If you can imagine a middle-aged English farmer in that new age world. But I did my best, but I wasn't very successful at adapting. Anyway, this young man, he said some sensible things, but anyway, on one occasion after I'd been there a fortnight, I remember he asked me some rather direct questions, which I answered as best I could, but it didn't go down favorably at all. And so he called me proud and aggressive and one or two other things. And a feature of these people that were around him, they were all great talkers. They went into silence as tall as I was. And they just talked endlessly. And the other thing I couldn't bear was that these meetings were held quite late at night, and they would talk all night. They never went to bed. They just sat up talking. I couldn't bear this, especially after being in the silence of Africa, always being a silent man. Anyway, they disapproved of this, and I really well, anyway, the gist of it is that I got pushed out of this community, and I was deeply upset by what this man had said to me. It's no easy thing to be in a room of I don't know, a couple of hundred people probably, and to be sort of challenged and crushed in this way in front of everybody. And I'd already been meditating some 30 years, 25 years, and thought I knew something about it. And, this could have been this man's father. But anyway, that's what happened to me. And I felt a great sort of discomfort of evil, really terrifying, actually. Yes, absolutely terrifying. I felt an upsurge of evil, which was accentuated by the hatred, really, that I felt coming from a number of his followers. So anyway, I fled with this burden into the wilderness, literally. I just, in desperation, hired a car and just drove off into the night, absolutely no idea where to go or anything. I knew absolutely nothing about America. I'd never been there before. Didn't even know what the road signs were, how I got out of San Francisco on a dark winter night. God knows what I did. Eventually got out beyond the lights into where I felt at home. And anyway, I survived. But for some weeks I wandered around in the Mojave Desert, gradually learning what hash browns were. I remember. I had no idea. I went to a cafe and asked what they were, and I remember the people turning around, looking at me open mouth. Who is this quiet-spoken man who wasn't wearing a cowboy hat or a baseball cap, asking what hash browns were? Anyway, and I really felt I was going out of my mind. I was very, very sort of terribly depressed, and and seriously desperately struggling within myself with this evil that I felt was running through me. And I just passed a little gas station way out there in the Mojave Desert, and there was a sign saying cook wanted. Well, I went in and asked, and at first they said no, and then they said yes. So I became a cook in this little gas pump cafe, and that really saved my life, seriously. Gave me something to do. So for a few months, I learned to flip eggs and cook pancakes and things, and and deal with these customers. Most of them gamblers on their way to or from Las Vegas, who'd either made it or lost it. And so that was my introduction to American cafe life. Yes, that put me back on my feet, really, but I did go through some terrible times, which I describe in this book, because I was pretty much discovering a lot more about what we call the ego, which is this separate John Butler, which had been so effectively called out and demoted, deflated by this teacher. I was truly grateful for what happened, actually, when I'd had a bit of time to reflect, and the terror, as I say terror with full meaning, died down a bit. I didn't take lightly what he said, because of course it's right, because a feature of the ego is that it is proud and aggressive. That's exactly what it is. And unless something in one's life pricks this bubble, we can go on believing it till the end of our days. So to be humiliated in this way, I was then 50 years old, it was a very, very salutary lesson indeed. And my God, I was grateful just to be a cook in there among the cockroaches to save my life, get it together again. And anyway, I'd never earned so much money in my entire life as that. I think it was an incredible $6 a day. That was $60 a day. Goodness, that was wealth unthinkable for me. And so after a few months, I'd earned enough to hire another car in Las Vegas. And then I went out into, as a young man, I'd always wanted to be a cowboy. And it was my dream to see those Western states. And I had a wonderful time touring everything that I loved. I went through New Mexico and Texas, and sleeping outside under the stars, and met people much more my sort of people, the farmers and the ranchers of the West and the Midwest. I loved all that. I loved the prairie. I was back on home ground there, expanding under the stars and among the grass and the animals, wild and domestic. And as I came back into my own there, I ended up in the wonderful Yellowstone Park, and I saw lots of wild animals. The wonderful buffalo that has always been my dream for years, to see them on several reservations I went to, and learned a lot of wonderful things, which sort of put me back where I belonged, really, and expanded into spirit. All this is rather jumbled together in this chapter called Homesickness, but it was a wonderful lesson, really. Perhaps cleansing me, helping to clean up the John Butler, to make him even more able to access this infinite love. Not only to the extent it's ever visible in people, but also in the great spaces of this world. And eventually, through the gift of meditation in spirit itself, beyond both women and the spaces of this world, because ultimately, as I know only too well now, I'm an old man, this total self-abandonment into love is actually, in my experience, only found in God, in spirit, which is not dependent on any creature of this earth. We start off, of course, looking for it in a partner, in the things we love in this earth. Certainly for me, my work of farming was a great introduction into love. So finally, my dears, we come to God. That's home, the only home, really. Our homes in this world are but temporary. Our loves in this life may or may not extend into the eternal. One day, maybe we may discover, to the best of my experience, the great blessing is to expand and expand beyond all limit, beyond all description, beyond all creature comforts, into the love of God.
Thank you, John. You write, in theory, it's not so hard to identify ego and the cause of our disease, but will or can we let it go and die? I'm the one who keeps it in existence, and only I can stop adding fuel to its fire. Do you have some advice on how to transcend the ego from your own experience?
Well, I suspect if I say one or two things, they're small fry, really. One very instructive thing is to observe how often your voice will, or you will speak and think from the little pronouns I, me, and mine. Now, every time we say I, me, or mine, or write it, that's ego. So there's a sort of red warning light if you're interested in identifying and getting beyond the ego. Because first of all, we've got to see what it is, identify it, and see what a hold it has over us. All the words like I want, or my opinion is, or this is mine, my house, my job, my interests, my everything. My, I, me, mine. You'll find that pretty much your entire life is governed by this. Well, that's ego. How much are you prepared to let go? But there we are. Puts the buck back with us, doesn't it? You see, we're almost totally buried in ego. You know, a lot of sort of high-minded young people come to me and say sweetly, how do I get rid of the ego? If you can. Look at this body of mine, an old man's body. Or look at, if you're younger, look at, I'm talking to whatever age you're at, my dear, look at your body. That's ego. Because it's going to die. And the cause of ego, which is sin, is death. So your body is ego. Your body is crystallized ego. If you didn't have an ego, you would be in heaven in spirit. then you wouldn't have this corrupt mortal body. So, are you prepared to abandon your body? Well, in the Middle Ages, some of these hermits, they did their best, didn't they? Starving themselves, living alone in a cave, crawling all the way to the Holy Land on their hands and knees, doing all those sort of things, which we don't do too willingly these days, trying to humble the flesh, the proud flesh. Well, you see, that's the extent of the entire world is governed by ego. And the Bible's crystal clear about this, because this is the prince of darkness. And this is what governs the world. That's why we don't know. That's why we go to get educated, because you think you don't know. Because this world is ignorance, and the blind lead the blind in this world. And even what you might call the teachers of this world are usually in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So it's very difficult to even get a glimmering of what isn't ego. So pretty much it's this world and our place in it. How do you get rid of it, dear? Well, commit suicide. Is that the answer? I suspect you'll take it with you, won't you? Perhaps one just has to sweat it out, just live through this life and be humbled. And I hope if you're serious about this, you might find a young teacher like this one in America that so humbled me. There I was in my 50s at the peak of my abilities. Already I was was quite a spiritual teacher, before then. I was in charge of a lot of students. I thought I knew something about it. I was brought right down, thank God. I never been called a teacher since. Yes. The way to overcome the ego, my dears, is being humbled, having your nose rubbed in the dirt over and over and over again, being broken on the rack of your pride, crushed. This proud ego. When you don't know anything and you can't do anything, then you might cry out, God help me. Then you're on the way. You asked me, didn't you? How do I deal with my ego?
I think it's a wonderful answer.
But I don't deal with it. The ego dies. That's why human answers never work out, you see. All these well-meaning, I won't say to call them rude, all these well-meaning people who think that humanity can solve the problems of the world. My dear, the only problem in this world is me. Starts here. That's a mighty big step, isn't it? Instead of blaming other people and the plastic people and oil and all that, here it is, my dear. This is the cause of the world's downfall. It's me. The less of me, the more of God. The less of me, the better. When you're nothing, absolutely nothing, dear, then maybe you're getting near home. I certainly wouldn't dare to claim that. I've still got a long way to go. And funny, the only thing I really feel safe in describing myself these days is as a sinner. Again, it's an lovely old-fashioned word, but it's such a good word. I do recommend it to you. And the Jesus prayer, which quite a lot of you know about. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And the first of all sinners is me. I've elaborated on this in another place, but I won't go into it now. But it's well worth considering that. By the way, there was a wonderful thing posted on Facebook that I saw earlier on today. Somebody sent it to me. It was words of a man called David Hawkins, who was talking about the two things, silence and action, and comparing the effect of each. It's a beautiful statement. I never heard it put better. Well worth finding. We live so much by action, you see, and who's behind our acts? Me, of course. Always me trying to put the world to rights, me trying to make things better, me trying to get rid of my ego. And but you see, paradoxically, it's the more I try to improve me, the more I get screwed up I get. That's why in meditation is this, is letting go. And eventually you let go all the activity, not only outside, but the inner activity. You let go, you come to silence. And in silence, when you are nothing, then you realize you're no longer clinging on to this separate existence, but you've melted into this infinite expansion. And that's the meaning of not my will, but thine, O Lord. And we come under God's will. This is the answer to ego. You see, not my will, but thine be done. Into thy hands I commend my spirit. Jesus' last words on the cross, you see, this ultimate surrender. When we surrender not to anything from me, into God's will, then you see, it's God that does it, not us. God knows what to do. I don't.
You write on the same page, 110, outside of God, those who feel secure and confident are only so within their prison walls.
That's right, yes. Oh, yes, don't we build up our structures of our prison walls within our bank accounts, our homes, our friends, our jobs, our justifications for existence in this world. Oh, yes, all that. We're completely fenced in, aren't we, by our own projections, my this and my that. Absolutely. And this is, this is where we feel secure. Of course it is, both individually and nationally. Yes, this is our false security. Well, it may serve for a while, but sooner or later it crumbles. If only when you die, what about your security then? Can't take it with us beyond the grave, can we? No, the only security ultimately is to trust in God, trust in this, in the infinite mercy. Yes, we live in a complete fool's paradise of our own creation.
It sounds like this trip to America was a big lesson in humility.
Well, there is one of my books is, we're reading extracts from this book that I call Mystic Burning, because that's where literally I was burnt. My ego received it was very much burnt, not totally, I'm afraid. It's been burning ever since, but it's only went through a pretty big fire there. And yes, I've subtitled the book, Salutary Lessons in the USA. If you don't know what the word salutary means. I didn't myself till I thought suddenly thought of it, looked it up in the dictionary. It means useful or healthy, something for our own good. Salutary lesson. Yes, yes, it did. It was a very salutary lesson for me. But interestingly enough, afterwards, going through the western states, the lovely buffalo. Oh goodness me! I remember sitting on a rock before the prairie was overgrazed and ploughed up, and God knows what man's done to it. The little bits of original prairie that you find were absolute wonderland of natural vegetation. Oh, a sort of miracle of hundreds, if not thousands, of different plants all harmoniously growing together, flowering at different times. Oh my goodness me. There's nothing in life I find more beautiful than natural pasture land. And there on that glorious prairie on a sunny morning once, there was a whole lot of buffalo just walking by me. I couldn't quite touch them, but I was very near. I just sat still. They walked past me, and oh my goodness, talk about being in paradise. I was that morning. Lovely, lovely things. God knows how people could ever kill them, but they did, didn't they? Extraordinary things happened out there. I felt the whole place was sort of haunted by what took place there. Like you go to old battlefields, the old battlefields in Europe, you sense that history that took place there. Oh man, 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 what have you done? All in the name of your own glorification, really. Interesting, I learned that how traditionally the Indians, they didn't collect possessions, so they were able to live just in, with the minimum of material clutter. Didn't even write books, they just passed their histories down orally. And by living without possessions, then, of course, they were so much closer to the realities of life, naturally spiritual. So I learned a lot out there. Interesting. Yes, I had a couple of encounters with, sorry, they're not called Indians, are they? I'm sorry, I'm just an old man now, Native Americans, but there was a maid, a Navajo maid, who I worked with in the calf. And I met another couple of an Indian family. They were Kiowas, I think, in Oklahoma. I met them, and of all the people I met in America, they were the most real people I met. Interesting, isn't it? Unsophisticated, just, well, I suppose pretty much uneducated, but they had a reality. I wrote about it. So I remember that. And there was a young, I went through, there was an Apache reservation in, I suppose, New Mexico, and I stopped by a stream there, and a young man came up, a young Apache man, and he spoke to me, and he's one of those conversations I've remembered all my life. A real man. He spoke so just simply about his life. When I left, he said, "God bless you." I think he said, "I'll pray for you." I said, "I'd pray for him." Yeah, a real man, my God. They're the real teachers of this world, my dears. If you want to learn reality, go and find a chap like that. I think we do find them. I think they're given to us.
You're right. The path to freedom can become very frightening, and the lonelier, the more devastating that life is found, the more we shrink back to familiarity, taking refuge in identity and institution, in provision and matter, and our own works, sleeping the well-known sleep of comfort, safe within our chains. Wow.
Yes, I love that. I like that. you know, I was invited. Such extraordinary things happened to me. Quite amazing. Honestly, people think of it. We plan our lives. But can you imagine? After this experience in America, I went back to England, and I was again once more drifting around completely, not knowing what to do with myself. And I, out of the blue, I was invited to go back to university at the age of 51, I think I was then, and study Russian, for heaven's sake. And of course, I would. I say, talk about clutching at a straw. and I was asked to write an essay in my application form. So I wrote this thing as an essay. And yes, and I thought of how chained we are within what we create around ourselves, our civilizations, our societies, our structures, our everything, really. All the fabrications of the ego, and there we sleep safe within our chains, comfortable in our soft, warm, clean beds while the snow blows outside, and we fool ourselves we're secure. Yes, well, we are to that small extent, aren't we? I've got a nice warm bed in the next room, and it's cold winter night. I shall put on my electric blanket and go to sleep there tonight, feeling safe. But dear, it's a very temporal thing, isn't it? When will the angel of death come to me, call me home? Can't take my bed with me there, can I? Am I prepared? What is it to be prepared before the angel of death? What, when we stand before God, or however you visualize it is, what's of worth? I suspect humility. Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Might serve you well. Jesus tells us to consider ourselves when we've done everything, consider ourselves unworthy servants, doesn't he? I commend that to you, my dears. When you've done your best in this world, think of yourselves as unworthy servants, and consider well what it is to be a servant rather than a master. It's more blessed to serve than to be served, I assure you. I'm being rather somber tonight, aren't I? You asked me some serious questions. Homesickness, I call this chapter. Homesickness for what? For reality, perhaps. For the real world, the real things.
It's a serious topic, John.
We discover, you see, we learn mostly by elimination. Through the process of life, we learn what is not real. You see, what is not true. What doesn't stand the test of time, that lets us down. So gradually we eliminate the things that don't work. And then with a bit of luck, we sort of pare the field down and end up with what does. What does work, dear? Trust in God, not me. This is the arm of flesh, you see, that fails. The arm of God faileth not. What is God? Well, there I discuss in that other times, in other places. But ultimately, you see, the kingdom of God is not of this world. This world is death. This world is the world of darkness, of ignorance and death. The real world is spirit. No darkness, no death, no problems. But to get there, we need to let go this. This is where we hold on to this like grim death. My life. This needs to be surrendered into thy hands, O Lord, thy will, not mine. This is what's called the work, the real work. Not only for ourselves, but with and for other people, and ultimately for the love of the work itself. Because it's real.